Well, it looks like 2020 Democrat presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard is suing Google, which is a pretty bold move. Now, I've spoken favorably of Ms. Gabbard in the past, although on this particular issue, I'm not so certain that she has a pretty solid case. Now, the story goes like this. After, you folks may remember, she did very well in the first Democratic debate, got a lot of buzz, and she was the top searched candidate on Google after that debate. Upon receiving that news, Ms. Gabbard and her team thought, hey, this is a good time. We should start buying some Google ads since people are searching for us so that, our website goes to the top of the list, and when people Google the name Tulsi Gabbard, they don't just see a bunch of hit pieces from the mainstream media. Seems like a pretty sensible advertising strategy. However, Google decided after the debate, and Ms. Gabbard, did so well, that they needed, I guess, to temper her a bit and to rein her in and let her cool her heels. So they suspended Gabbard's campaign's ad account on Google, which it completely prevented them from promoting, their link in the Google search results. So their website probably got buried. And obviously, this was a big loss to them because this was a huge fundraising opportunity after the debate when so many people were searching for her name. If her website had been on the top of the results because she paid for an ad, then you would have had lots of people going to her website and donating money and maybe volunteering. But instead of that, all people saw probably were hit pieces saying how, anyone who questions, why we're in Afghanistan 20 years later must be a Russian bot, and other equally nonsensical hot takes. Now, Google claims that they didn't target Ms. Gabbard and try and, rein her in or anything. They say that, they have their automated system which flags suspicious content or suspicious conduct, which is supposed to protect their customers. So they essentially say that their automated system shut down her account because they suspected a fraudster of using her account to purchase ads. And of course, that might make some sense if they all of a sudden tried to buy a ton of ads after not buying any ads at all. Someone could make the case that an automated system would see that as suspicious since they suddenly increased their ad buying. And apparently after there was a manual review of Ms. Gabbard's case, her account was reinstated. But of course, by that time, all of the buzz around her, in the very fast-moving, less than 24-hour news cycles, she had already been moved out, and her debate performance was old news. So she really couldn't capitalize on that. And so now she's suing Google for something like $50 million in damages, which if you try and quantify in terms of money the amount of supporters she could have attracted to her website and people she might have been able to rope in had she been able to buy those ads, you could say that perhaps that's worth $50 million. I think $50 million is not at all unreasonable, certainly. Now, Google's excuse in this case reminds me a lot of how they talk about YouTube demonetization, because, of course, people who say unpopular things on YouTube, when they upload a video, it's automatically demonetized, and then oftentimes it will get remonetized after it goes through a manual review. Of course, on YouTube, you tend to get your most views on if you're someone who uploads regularly right after you post a video, because then all your subscribers flood in to watch the video. And then by the time your video gets remonetized, the view count is not going to be growing very much. And so that effectively killed ad revenue for a lot of YouTubers. And it seems like this is kind of a similar case with Ms. Gabbard. And of course, in both cases, YouTube claims that it has absolutely nothing to do with an individual's political persuasions. And of course, in both cases, YouTube or Google claims that the suspensions or the demonetization have nothing to do with an individual's political preferences. Google has made it abundantly clear that they feel they have no political bias and that they're just here to serve their customers all around the world, and they're very proud to be able to help candidates in their political endeavors and to help people on YouTube, promote whatever content that is that they want to share. But of course, we know for a fact that that's not true because there was a leaked video from inside Google to where the higher ups were giving speeches to the lemmings, to the lower down folks on the food chain in Google, saying how we can't believe how we've neglected Hillary during this election. And basically, they blame themselves for Trump winning, saying we should have done more to stop Trump. We had the power to shut him down and to affect the search results, and we didn't do it. We were too fair. And this was, you can look it up. I think it might have been a Project Veritas video or something. It was very embarrassing for Google, and of course, they haven't been able to acknowledge this video. They just like to pretend it doesn't exist. But they made it very clear that in 2020, we're going to play a much more active role in the election. We're going to have to shut down people who we think are Russian bots, and of course, Tulsi, along with Trump, are both accused of being, Putin puppets. So Google clearly is not telling the truth here, which you would think would look good for Ms. Gabbard. However, I think her legal cases, if it's explained well in the Political article that I read, the Politico described her legal argument as essentially saying that Google violated her First Amendment right, and that's total nonsense. Ms. Gabbard should know, as a member of Congress, if you read the text of the First Amendment, it says very clearly at the beginning, Congress shall make no law, meaning that the First Amendment applies very narrowly to the actions of the United States Congress. The First Amendment doesn't apply to anyone else. If someone tells you, hey, shut up, they're not violating your First Amendment right to free speech. If Google decides not to run your ads just because they don't want to, because they don't like you, you can say that they're jerks and that they're abusing their power in the marketplace. However, they're not violating your First Amendment right because they are not Congress. So I assume that this will get her some good publicity waging this legal battle, but I think ultimately she will lose if she has a competent judge. Now, of course, she might have a judge who wants to expand the meaning of the First Amendment for some reason to cover Google, of all things. And so if she finds a real activist judge who also doesn't hate her, because that's the other thing, even if you have an activist judge, if they're real committed establishmentarians, they're not going to want to help someone like Gabbard, even if they think it's for the greater good. Now, with that said, even though technically her argument legally I don't think holds up, I do think that it is an interesting case to say that Google is violating her First Amendment rights, because if you think about why the First Amendment only mentions Congress, back then, when the Constitution was ratified, it was understood that Congress made all the laws. If there was going to be anything done with the iron-fisted government, it had to go through Congress. So by putting, Congress shall make no law, they're essentially saying, no, nobody can restrict your free speech. You'll always have a right to free speech. But of course, Google does have a bit of an ability to restrict people's free speech, despite not technically being the Congress, because they are a de facto arm of the government. They are definitely a part of the empire, and that's why they're trying to shut down Tulsi. The only thing that Tulsi believes that's really out of the Democratic mainstream now is that essentially she thinks, perhaps we've fought too many wars in the Middle East. And of course, Google as a corporation, if they were just a normal corporation, they wouldn't care about her opinions on, endless Middle East wars. The reason why Google cares about her opinions on endless Middle East wars is because they are very well plugged in with the elite, and they are, they're a part of the global American empire. Google is just as much the enemy to the proponents of peace as the folks at the State Department and the Pentagon. And of course, companies like Google and Amazon are working very closely with the government to make sure that they are protected and that they essentially do become de facto monopolies. Not in the sense that someone like Tulsi or Elizabeth Warren calls them monopolies. I think that your mainstream monopoly theory is absolute garbage. But real monopolies can form not just by being very good businesses, but rather by gaining government protections, which essentially make them immune to competition and allow them to actually use aggressive force to oppress other people. Google wants that power, and to a certain extent they already have it, which is why they are working in this case by suspending Tulsi. They are shutting down anti-government speech. Make no mistake, they shut down Tulsi on behalf of the military-industrial complex and on the the national security establishment. So in spirit, I would say that Tulsi is correct in saying that Google is violating her right to free speech. However, legally, the Constitution doesn't exactly reflect the kind of government we have today. That's why it's kind of outdated, just because people have gone around the Constitution and you have all this plausible deniability and things, and I really see no way for her to win in this case. However, I do wish her luck. So if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and subscribing. And if you do subscribe, please click the bell because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.